Heritage Society.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Raleigh Green, and I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's lecture presented by the Hurley Heritage Society. I'm a board member of the Hurley Heritage Society and the organizer of our lecture series. Tonight's lecture is titled Visiting Old West Hurley. Before we get started, a few quick notes. Please be sure you are on mute. If you're not on mute and there's background noise, it can disturb everyone else, and sometimes it's hard to hear. During the presentation, if you have a question, you can use the chat feature to send your questions ahead of time, and they will be answered during the presentation and or at the end. At the conclusion of the formal presentation, we'll open things up for further questions. Be sure then to unmute yourself. This presentation is being recorded and it will be posted to the Hurley Heritage Society website and linked to on our Facebook page in the coming days. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our guest speaker, Kara Keene. She's the director of the West Hurley Library. Kara is going to share with us a slice of history about the West Hurley area that underwent extraordinary changes during the early 19th century to a
Excuse me, I didn't know it was going to be recorded.
Again, if everyone would mute themselves, that would be great. If you were unsure how to mute yourself, look for your picture on the screen and there's a button, roll over it, and there's a little button that says mute. Okay. All right. Thank you. And so as many of you already likely know, to create the man-made reservoir is necessary to gather the water for the new drinking water for New York City. New York claimed the right of eminent domain. Within the township of Hurley, the hamlets of Ashton, Glenford, and West Hurley were removed, and the area flooded to construct the Ashokan Reservoir. The city condemned these towns, paid some compensation to property owners, forced people from their homes, and cleared the land. Construction began on the dam in 1907. Two cousins, Hobart Rowe and Allen Rowe, became interested in researching one of these former hamlets, West Hurley. The cousins contributed in separate ways to the preservation of knowledge about the town. Hobart Rowe created a scale model. Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. However, the library does possess a videotaped interview with Hobart Rowe and slides of some of the homes. Allen Rowe's research was compiled by his family into a book called Old West Hurley Revisited, a nostalgic tour. The book was formatted as an imaginary tourist visit to the little village. This presentation will act as an introduction to these collections. So, without further ado, welcome Kara Keene.
Hi there. Hi. Um, I will, let me see, I'll have to let you know. I'm not sure if I have chat now, but once I start the PowerPoint, I don't know if I'll be able to see it. So I'll let you know if I can still see it. I haven't experimented with that yet. What we did, the library did a couple years ago was to take digital photographs that we had and combine them with Alan's information and Hobart's information. And then we put that digital collection together with all of that information online. So my purpose today is to give you a background about that collection, about the gentleman who created the information for that collection, and then to give you hints and tips about how to access it so you can actually go in and play around. So I'm actually going to share the PowerPoint here. Yep, and I can't see, let me see. I can see the chat. So if you do have any questions while I'm presenting, if you want to go ahead and do the chat, I can do that. I'm not so good with hands up. Otherwise, we can always do questions at the end. But if you see something and you want to ask a question, I'll try to catch it as I go along. Okay, so agenda. Again, I'm going to go over a brief history of West Hurley, a brief history of the Ashokan Reservoir and its just specifically its effect on West Hurley, the two cousins, and what to find in our collection. There's about 1,850 objects in our collection. Um, and believe me, I'm familiar with all of them. They took a while to put together. West Hurley, it was interesting. I just had a call from somebody and they said, oh, it's the same as Hurley, right? And it's actually not. I was surprised to find that Hurley and West Hurley developed very differently. Hurley was a slow starter, as they say. It was actually sparsely populated until the 1800s. Reasons for that, especially, it was not very good for farming. Very hilly with thin soiled slopes. There was the swamp, the Beaverskill swamp, that, I mean, automatically when you hear swamp, you know it's not going to be a good story for farming, but it was fed with a very sluggish stream and beaver dams, which meant there's not enough water to power water mills. It was also not really easily accessible from the Hudson Valley at that time, and with a series of steep, stony ridges. West Hurley prosperity really started to take off when the Turnpike of 1831 between Delaware County and Kingston was put in. At that point, West Hurley actually became a logical stopover for teamsters between their Kingston and Delaware County. And of course, it was paved with slabs of bluestone. The bluestone industry, as many of you know, was extraordinarily important in early West Hurley. Some of the reasons for the popularity of bluestone itself is that it didn't become slippery when wet. So if you're using it for sidewalks, people are going to be less inclined to slip on them. Uh, it could also be used there's the trims for buildings and grindstones. I'm sure as you study West Hurley bluestone, you'll find out all of the places where bluestone was used all over the place. At its peak, there were 40 to 50 quarries employing about 1,500 men. Bluestone in West Hurley was easily accessible or more easily accessible because the ledges in West Hurley were close to the surface and primarily horizontal or just slightly tilted. So when they were quarrying it, they were easy to remove. Bluestone industry was gradually replaced by Portland cement. So its heyday was about the end of the Civil War to the close of the 19th century. The railroad was established in 1870 from Rondout to West Hurley, which brought in the boarding house industry. And to give you an impression of how much of an impact that had, in 1870, about 2,000 people visited. That was when the railroad, right before it was put in. In 1883, you're up to about 200,000. So big impact. And then, of course, you have the lumber industry and you have ice harvesting. Ashokan Reservoir. New York City needed water. You have several reasons. You've got an increasing population, flushable toilets and faucets, installation of sewers. You've got a merger of Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island with Manhattan and the Bronx. So you've got a bigger area, municipality that needs water. So they formed a 1905 Water Supply Commission whose sole purpose was to supply water to New York City. And they were given the power to acquire lands under eminent domain. And with that power, they could construct reservoirs, dams, aqueducts, and filters. Of course, Ashokan was not the only one to put in a reservoir. There are other reservoirs, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. And we have a question about which railroad, and I'm going to have to come back to that because did I write it? I don't know which railroad. Ulster and Delaware. Thank you. U&D. You guys know more than I do. Eminent domain. Um, to give you an idea of the effect of eminent domain, in this area alone, for the Ashokan, 2,300 people were relocated, 500 buildings were moved or demolished, 11 miles of railroad rerouted, 32 cemeteries moved, 10 to 12 hamlets removed. And I actually had a question about this the other day, which is kind of cool. It was not, it was litigated because with eminent domain, you're told this is how much you're going to get. So they actually had 755 cases that were heard all the way up to 1932 with people objecting to the amount that they were told that they were going to get for their property. They put in $10 million in claims, but only a little over 1.4 million was awarded. So that can give you an idea that most cases were just not, they did not win their cases. Actually, if you're interested, the Ulster County Archives down in Kingston has a record of those cases if you want to take a really deep dive into that. And, there was a lot of resulting bitterness over the loss of property and homes. And here is a map of the Ashokan, and I'm gonna get it. But this area is primarily the area of West Hurley. Oh, look at that, it works. And that we're going to be talking about, and you should get, here we go. That would be the actual town of West Hurley. So just to give you an idea of what the geography looks like. Hobart. He lived from 1896 to 1982. He lived when he was actually lived in the town of Old West Hurley. I'm calling Old West Hurley what was removed from the Ashokan. On the north side of Main Street Plank Road, directly across from Stone Road. In 1904, he moved several miles west of the village to his grandparents' home, Chauncey and Catherine. And there he stayed until he was forced out by the building of the Ashokan. Hobart is known for building a scale model of the town of Old West Hurley. He began in the late 1950s or early 1960s. And in order to create this scale model, he relied on childhood memories with help from photographs and postcard pictures. And he worked on that till his death until 1982. So he spent a good 20, 30 years working on this very well documented project. But you can see here's a close-up of the model. Here's Hobart with the part of the model here. And again, there's a close-up of the railroad down below. Here is a picture. Actually, this is just part of the model because it did loop around back, but it'll give you an idea of the scale of this. So the library possesses slides of a lot of the individual model homes, as well as a video recording of Hobart actually talking about what he remembers about the town and describing some of these homes and the families that live there. Allen, loosely his cousin, actually was separated by a generation, I think. Cousin works. He lived from 1927 to 1992. Again, he wrote the book Old West Hurley Revisited. You can see that in the upper left-hand corner. The library does own copies that circulate.
Watch this with me?
If you want to look at it, actually take it out. And in 1930, he moved to the current site of West Hurley and lived in different houses all on John Street. His father, Millard, was young when Old West Hurley was revisited. Spent years researching the village of Old West Hurley. His research began when his daughter Candy had to put together a school paper about the town in 1970. So just got his interest going, and he put together this wonderful book. If you look at the book, if you take the book out, it's interesting. It does include a lot of these photos we're talking about, and what he does is he goes through and he creates this imaginary journey. At the end of the book, also are transcribed notes from different sources. I believe there's a newspaper in there. I believe there are, off the top of my head, I think there's also notes from a Methodist church, their minutes. So again, if you're into local history or studying your family who came from this area, that's a good source of information for you. So moving on, in his book, and what we have digital photos are maps and digital images taken of these homes when they were condemned. So here is what I'm going to show you here is kind of the organization of how New York City's Board of Water Supply organized everything, because I organized the documents around it. So it'll give you a basis for understanding. So in order to condemn the area, they first went in and they surveyed the entire area. They then divided their surveyed area into 18 different sections, starting from the west. If you remember that map in your head, starting from the west, which would be Olive, all the way over to the east, which would be West Hurley. West Hurley were the west parts of West Hurley, what we call what was the town of West Hurley, would be in sections 16 through 18. So here is a map of one of these sections. This happens to be, I think it's section 16. I can't see it over the meeting chat. Oh, I gotta go back. Section 15. I'm sorry. This is section 15. So you can see they have a description here. This is what it is. And just to answer questions in the chat, the model is missing. We don't know what happened to it. I have stories about what might have happened to it, but I've never been able to track it down. At the time, he did offer it to different organizations, but it was so large, nobody could take it. And the map, if you go out, is I don't know what you mean by high res. I do have TIFFs of them available in the library. If you go out to the website, they're available as JPEGs. But this particular map will not be on the website because this is a summary page. When we get into it, I do have smaller maps which will in the actual records identify the location on the big map, if that makes sense. You can go down to the town of Hurley. They have the maps that you can go through. And the maps are also available at Ulster County Archives. But to describe this map, you can see, it's cut off on my picture because of the chat, but you can see on the very far right, you have numbers associated with names, and then the numbers are on the map. So those are the parcel numbers, and then they show the owners for those different parcels. And then they're also combined by section. So when you go online and look, they will be divided first by parcel number. So I can't even read this map, but let's say 708 is on this map. So you'll look and it will say 708 and the person's number. So it will take this information. Inside the record will include which section they come from. Okay. So here is, um, so for each of those parcels, what they had to do was go in and take photos of the different buildings on the property as part of their legal process. And fortunately, we have some of those records left. So here's an example of a record. You have a picture of the house. On the back of that photograph, it says the Board of Water Supply of the City of New York Reservoir Department. It's telling you it's parcel number 719. It's the property of Charles Wright. It's located in section 1536. The photographer was William H. Longyear. It's describing it. It's a house. And then the date the photo was taken. Again, not all of the photographs for all of the parcels have survived. So here, when I was talking about, I'll give you a blow up. This will be closer to what you'd actually see in the records so that you have a point of reference. And going to go all the way back, Alan, if you recall, he takes you on a trip through the old town of West Hurley. Well, this represents part of his trip on a map, and on the pink items are three of the houses that he describes. So what I did was I took his descriptions and I actually put them into the record for that parcel. So for example, if you look at 838, you would, in the home of Clinton Scoville, whatever Allen described in his book, I put into the record. Now, and there's the other records are listed there. Okay, no more questions. So here's Clinton Scoville's home. And you can see the different, so there were four different photographs of pieces of property associated with that property. You have the main house, you have a hen house, one, you've got another hen house, and a barn down below. And now in his book, for example, he describes an incident. Saturday morning trip to Wilbur with a load of bluestone. Road was icy and wagon slid into ditch. Nicholas, the man who's telling the story, jumped into a whiffle tree and avoided being crushed under 8 tons of stones. Load landed upside down in front of Scoville's porch. He was not hurt and only one stone was broken. So that description would be in the record. Here we have an example of another property. Henry Slater Home and Harness Shop. So Allen has a description. It is a long, narrow house built with the east side against the hill and has a 2-story open porch across the west side. Henry is a fine craftsman and is kept busy making and repairing harnesses and doing other leather work. And the reason I wanted to bring up this particular home is because of Alan's description, we know if we look closely at the little image right next to his door, you can see carriage robes, and you can put together they had to do with that being a leather shop. So it can just help give you a little bit more information about that property. Because otherwise it just looks like a house. You don't know it's actually a harness shop. This is an example of a property where we don't have anything from New York City. All we have is Hobart's model. And he describes that happens to be the town hall. This building was used as a town hall where meetings were held. Many people seeking an evening out, especially on a Saturday night, would make their way to the hall, either to join the square dances or to choose partners for an ever popular waltz. A few were content just to sit back and listen to the music. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know. People's Island is someone's asking if the model went to People's Island. I don't know. I've heard, well, I've heard of rumors. So this is an example. I wanted to bring this up. So this is Everett and Sons store, and you can see Alan mentions it in his book. Across Main Street is a store operated by Humphrey Everett and his son Ward. Here, in addition to a small selection of groceries, one can buy pens, pencils, all sorts of stationery supplies, and even some candy for the sweet tooth. The post office is housed in an attached room. I mean, little thing is our post office. On the east side of this building, the pay station of the Hudson River and Citizens Telephone Companies is also located here. Hobart Row. No village is complete without a post office. Humphrey Everett was the postmaster. Stationery and candy was sold here. So very similar description of the property. However, if you actually look at the photo compared to the model, you can see there's differences. For example, you know that the little building, which is a post office, is missing off of the model. There is an awning there. There's a difference in windows, difference in windows down below. So, in other words, Hobart did this through memories. And if he happened to have photographs, it's not going to be a historical record, but I did include them because I felt that they enhanced the information that we had about these properties. Just look at them when you view them with caution. And Alan's, I just to add to that, Alan's material as well. And he states in his book, all of the events, places, and people mentioned were real and could be documented. Enhanced dialogue and filler material are included. Based inclusions on anecdotes and conversations with locals who lived in Old West Hurley. He tried to keep that to a minimum. But again, both things you have to kind of balance out and decide what you want to regard as fact and more just as background information. So this is a copy or a copy of a record that you will actually find in the collection. So we can start to dig in and get an idea of how to navigate through the collection that's online. What we opted to do was to create what they call objects. So instead of just having, what did I say, 1,850 individual photographs, we combined several different objects together into one record so that everything is together, which hopefully will make it easier to understand. So you can see this is 860 House Image 1. Well, actually, 860 Barton's Grocery Store. So 860 would be your parcel number, and Barton's Grocery Store would be the owner. And this is the first object in that collection. And I usually, if I have it, I put the house first. So here's house image 1. Probably means there's a house image 2, which there is. And then the second object would be the back of that image. So if you wanted to see how they described it, that's where it would be. And down below, we have the object description includes his slide. So if you squint, you can see Hobart Ride's slide description there. And then if there's anything that Alan has in his book, that's right below it. So both of those things are combined in the record is all together. And then if you look over on the right again, you see you have another house image. There was no back on that one, so that's not included. There was a barn, and there's the back of the barn. And there was, Hobart did have a model, so that slide image is included. And then there's a map to show you where it is in relation to other, in this case, other places in the village. If you want, in the notes is the location if you actually want something to click. I'm going there, I think, next. Oops, maybe not. There we go. If you go to our website, westhurleylibrary.org, on the right-hand side, you'll see a link to special materials and local history digital. Click on that and it will take you to the collection. If West Hurley Library, if some of these other URLs are a little harder. And here's a thank you. To the cousins who had the foresight to actually do all of this research. It was definitely a love of their lives. I spoke, Candy gave us permission to use all these materials. James Decker, the Hurley Town historian, worked with me a lot putting this collection together. And Gail and Bruce gave me access to their collection as well. Ah, there's my maiden name. It's now Keene. Here's some more images from the town. Again, you can see on the left is the model, and on the right is the actual photo of the church. And I'm a librarian, so here's our bibliography. And I'm going to stop sharing that and then go ahead and actually bring you to the website. Yes. All right, so once you go to westhurleylibrary.org, click on local history, this is where actually you will end up. Well, let's see. You're going the roundabout route here. Actually, let me bring you to West Hurley Library. That's not it. That's our calendar. There we go. And you can can't get to services. If you can get to it from the top menu, local history, and from the side, local history here. And there are two collections actually. One is early 20th century Hurley. So anything that I have that's associated with Hurley, those sections is in that collection. And then there's early 20th century Olive. We had some content from Olive, so I went ahead and put it in a separate collection. But we're going to go bounce right in. And we're going to explore the collection. On the left-hand side, you do have some subjects. So if you're interested in something particular, you can see there's a lot of subjects that you can explore there. A lot of chicken coops, 57 chicken coops. And physical format is less important. Dates are less important, but they are available for you to view. You can search for example, if you searched for Rao, you're going to get a lot of results because they're mentioned in all of these different records. But I'm going to actually search for Dumont. Whoops, maybe. Search for Dumont. So the model, he started working on it in the 1950s and 1960s. He passed away, I believe in, what did I say, 1983, so in the 1980s. I don't know how long his widow kept it. My understanding, it was just she attempted to give it, to donate it, and just was never successful.
Wow.
Donating it intact. So you can see these are all of the records that mention Dumont. Now, it may be that somebody Dumont worked at the church, or was a deacon. Maybe that's why he's mentioned there. Or they might have owned more properties, which is why he's reckoned there, mentioned there. But here's parcel 911. And you can see Dumont is mentioned here. I did transcribe this, so this text is searchable. And let me scroll up. So the first record, as I said, if I have a record of a house, that's going to be the first. So you can see the house, image of the house. If we scroll down a little, you have Hobart's description from his slide presentation, and you have Allen's narrative from his book. There's the subjects we use, which all of these are searchable. So if you decide you want to learn more about, you want to find more hotel records, you can do that. It will just search this collection. And then you can search by personal name from this record. So if you wanted to specifically find Levi, or corporate name in this case, because that has a corporate name as a hotel. It's slide number 10, which references Hobart's collection of slides, section 18, and parcel number 911. So remember I said section 18 was in the town of West Hurley. Again, these are all red. They're all hyperlinks. You can search them. And this was in the town of Hurley. In the hamlet of West Hurley is how we divided it up. So the first record is the house. Second record is the back. Actually, third object would be the barn. So here's the barn that was on the property. And then you can see the reverse of that with the stamp and the information. They happen to have a well house on the property. And here is the back of the well house, where you can see that's how they defined it, well house. And hen house, very important to them. Back of hen house. There's the back of the record. This would be the model that Hobart created, that had to do with that property, that actually Reuben's Best Hotel. And you can see here we have a map, and it's a blow up of the map, but there's the property in reference to, I'm pretty sure, 90% sure this is Plank Road going through here. But you get an idea of where the location is. Okay. I actually am going to stop sharing and see if anybody, looks like I talked pretty fast. See if anybody has any questions.
This is the time to ask questions. I'll start. I had a question in the chat. The bluestone industry with tourism, which sounded like they resided kind of in West Hurley at that time. That's an interesting combination. Do you know how big the tourism industry at the turn of the century was for that area?
Well, I know from the that one statistics, they went from 2,000 visitors to 200,000. It was very interesting, actually, reading in Allen's book. He describes people coming up for the day, and what they would do is they could hire someone to take them around town. So they would come and pick them up and drive them around, bring them to a boarding house. They would spend the night, have some wonderful meals, and then get back on the train and go back the next day. I also read, not quite, I guess they would stay in some cases in boarding houses, but they had a husband train. So specifically husbands, families would come up and stay. So the husbands would come over. There'd be on Friday night and they go back Sunday afternoon. So they called those that the husband train. And it was specifically there was enough of them that they designated a special routes for them, special times for them to go back.
Many years ago, we had a drought. I'm thinking, oh, way back, maybe in the early 80s, there was a drought and the Ashokan went dry.
Mhm.
And they did an aerial photo of the foundations of Old West Hurley.
Yes, we have some of those photos at the library. They haven't been digitized, but I do have some of the photos, and it's very interesting. Alan describes going with his father and having his father say, "Oh, here's the foundation. I remember this being here. This was the harness shop, whatever."
Right.
So I think that was probably another impetus for him because he grew up, both of them grew up around people
Right
who,
in there, yeah. Well, my grandmother, uh, her last name was Schultes at the time. She worked as a mother's helper in Old West Hurley before she married my grandfather. Now, she was 16 when she started there. She was 19 when she married him. And so I have an interest into which house she was in, you know. But yeah, and the way you described the boarding houses, and we had a boarding house. My grandmother and grandfather ran it. It's in Shady on McDaniel Road. In fact, McDaniel is my maiden name. And they had people, actually, the families would come up, and then the husbands would come up, and my father would have to go down to Kingston Point and collect all the husbands on the weekend and bring them up to the house. So yeah, I he picked them up from Kingston Point, which is interesting too.
well, it was really interesting. If you actually, it's in the town of Olive, Bishop's Falls. That was actually one of the court cases because they said, we've developed our boarding house around these falls, which you're going to remove. So it's more than just, whatever you declare the value of this property to be, because we have this tourist attraction here and we can't recreate it elsewhere. So
Right.
yeah, it was important. I'm trying to um there was a mention of a house on Main Street where they said um, they kept borders. If I find it, I'll let you know. But um,
Okay.
yeah, very. And then it's interesting the postcards, which what we're working on right now as the library is when I talk about local history, we've gone really local. So we're working on digitizing and cataloging our own records, which is a project. But that way we'll have minutes which are accessible, digitally from our website. And we're also, going through and deciding what financial records, et cetera, and other kinds of records to keep. But when I finally finish that, as you can tell, very exciting task, we're going to start working on digitizing some postcards, and I believe that was part of the tourism business was taking creating postcards, which in a lot of cases were produced in Germany, which is interesting because you have the little what we call a Nazi symbol now on them because they were all produced because the Germans had great equipment to produce these postcards. But that was part of the boarding house travel industry at the time, which is one of the reasons we have such great photos of these old houses and locations. Um, So are there houses moved from Old West Hurley that exist today in West Hurley or nearby hamlets? There are. I can't tell you what they are. I did some research on some churches that were moved. At least two of them are still in existence. And I know that I've heard tell of certain houses. I can't tell you off the top of my head what they are. Actually, the church on Route 28, it now has the radio station in it. That church, they saved the stained glass windows and put them in there. But then the church burned, so the stained glass windows are gone. So it was a good thought. But there were a couple other buildings. There's one up in Glenford. That was moved originally, and I believe that's the one off the top of my head where they had permission from the one of the engineers to move it, but they didn't get enough permission, so they actually ended up getting sued and had to pay $50 because they took the building. Okay, we have bluestone from this area was called the best because it was the lowest layer. And I have a thank you, which I thank you back for coming. Husband trains were all over. Yeah. Railroad in 1870 was originally the Rondout and Oswego. After that, it went bust. It was briefly the Kingston and Syracuse. It wasn't until the mid 1870s, I'm sorry, that it was again reorganized and became the Ulster and Delaware Railroad that we all speak of. So thanks for that. I'm glad we have a railroad enthusiast here. Did people also visit the area by taking the Dayliner steamboats? I don't know. Does anybody else know? Okay.
Imagine that was they came to Kingston Point, and that's where my dad picked up the people.
Okay.
I have, yeah,
It would
yeah.
probably be difficult time-wise to make the trip up from the city on a dayliner, travel to Hurley, enjoy West Hurley, enjoy time there, and make the reverse trip in one day. I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot. So it probably, but on a weekend, come up
Yeah.
Sunday, go
As
back
far
on
as far as I know, these husbands came up for the weekend.
Yep. Yeah, that makes sense. Do we have records of how much owners receive for their properties? I believe the Ulster County Archives has the lawsuits. So I believe they have, at the very least, some of the lawsuits are going to have them saying, you offered us this much, and and this is how much they actually received. So I know it's there. And I believe they have the rest of that, but I can't swear by it. But I know that at least is there because I've prowled through some of those records. Yes, the UDRR ran up to Kingston Point and up the line. Yes, West Hurley Methodist Church. No, I'm talking about the Woodstock. What is it? 100 point something. It's right before the turn for 375. It's a beautiful, beautiful building. They've done a wonderful job. If you get a chance to sneak online, because they have some pictures online and see what they've done with the interior of that, what is it? Woodstock is 100.1, is that what it is? It's the Woodstock Rock radio station, I believe. But yeah, they redid it. That's the building I'm talking about that actually burned. So it's not the octagonal building on Broadway. It's on Route 28. Was the Ashokan Church on Route 28 that is historical now one of them? I don't know. I didn't research that far. I know the one that is up in Glenford I believe it's near the fire department. The Glenford Fire Department was one of them that was moved. It's now privately owned. There it is, WDST on 28. And then there's, if you in the chat, there's a Kingston Point Park photo archive. And there's a link there if you're interested. I know that the Hurley Heritage Society also on their Facebook page. I know that they posted the story about the churches. I know that they also post regularly about some of the historical buildings and items of note. So that's, if you haven't followed them, that's a neat follow.
Any other questions? This is your chance to ask all about Old West Hurley. Looking at those photos, some of the houses with their porches, wraparound porches, it looks like the Wild West, what you would see in Wild West movies. Does that seem like that to you by any chance?
Um, I guess for me, well, I've spoken spoken to Eleanor Arno, who didn't grow up there. Her mother was a little girl when she was forced to move. So when I see the houses, I still, they have a picture of her mom on, or I guess her grandmother on the property, like the last picture that was taken before they had to leave. So that's kind of what I see is, the families having to give that up, and then, they had to start over in a house that was, let's say, far less far less desirable. So that's the feeling I get when I see some of them. Um, and I guess, I understand why it was done, but it's very interesting collection because first of all, it's a total snapshot in time. It doesn't seem that we have often where we have just, it's almost like a science fiction. You go back for one day, and see what a town looks like. And some of the photos do have people in them and animals, and there's one where they're obviously showing off their horse. They're very proud. There's another where a girl is posing next to I believe it's next to a well. I don't know why I remember the well, but she's obviously posing. It's a very coy pose. Um, and then if you zoom in on some of the photos, you can actually see the posted condemned signs on them, which is eerie. So very interesting that way. I mean, enough time has passed that people from the area aren't quite as sensitive, but like I said, it's eerie to me, I guess is the word I would use.
There was something else that came to my mind when this event took place with the condemning, I guess, uh, uh, did did the town leaders reestablish West? I mean, did they lay out a new West Hurley, or did that happen kind of organically?
My understanding is it happened organically, and I don't, from this is all I have to go on, but Alan makes the statement that most of the people did not, a great percentage of people did not actually reestablish themselves in West Hurley. He names a certain number of families that moved, but there was a lot of scattering, which um, Eleanor talked about, her mother talking about. And it wasn't just the loss of their home, it was the loss of their community. Her father was postmaster there. And, obviously you rebuild communities, but you were forced to leave that community. So it's a very different feeling, being forced to leave. And some people, April, I apologize if I'm butchering her name, Besaw, from Vassar College, Dr. Besaw, talks about some people were happy with what they got. They're like, yeah, great. We're moving on, we're restarting. Other people just, it was a huge financial hit and a huge emotional hit, and very hard to, it was enough to come back from.
I see a hand.
Yeah, I have a question. I currently act as an archivist for Friends of Historic Kingston. And in a batch of, so I completely relate to the challenges of your work and I appreciate it wholeheartedly with this material and to make it available to people. In a batch of materials that I went through, I found a map drawn to scale on pieces of paper glued together, dated about 1812, if my memory serves me correctly. And it was a proposal for a plank road to run from basically just south of Saugerties along the Esopus out to Fleischman's, that area, long road. You mentioned early in your presentation a plank road that you dated at 18, or was dated in the material as 1833. Do you have any materials in your collection about the creation of that plank road and any antecedents to the determination of where it was placed, etc.?
So actually in Old West Hurley Revisited, Allen mentions it. He has a history. And he says, of course, I'm just reading from my notes. But there was a lot of tanneries at the time. So what they did was from the tanneries, they had all the discarded lumber. So what they did, he dated it from in 1850 is when he dated it from. And he said it lasted about 15 years before it had to be replaced.
Well, this was dated much earlier. And it was a curiosity. It took me a long time to figure out from the markings. They even drew little houses in places along the route to figure out what geographical area am I looking at here. And it's just a very long map, and it talks about the chains as the measuring figure. You know, we use miles, whatever. They were using chains as their figure. Anyway, well, thank you.
So yeah, it specifically says on November 30, 1849, a meeting was held in Kingston to consider paving the dirt road with wooden planks. The tanneries were using the bark and discarding most of the remainder of the logs anyway, so it seemed feasible at the time to saw these logs into planks for the construction of the road. The plan was agreed upon, and by December of 1850, the road was completed from Pine Hill to Kingston. The planks were in use for more than 15 years, but the heavy wagons and the elements eventually took their toll, and it began to deteriorate and lose its efficacy. The planks were replaced from above West Hurley to Kingston by the present Stone Tram Road, but is still known as Plank Road.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to know who was behind the effort to consider the road that this map indicates. Thank you.
Yeah, he didn't have that one footnoted. Okay, Chester Hartwell has, if you look in the chat, has an article from the Kingston Freeman from 1908. Oh, talking about the relocation of the Ulster and Delaware Railroad. Last of the Handmade Dams by Bob Studing is an excellent resource and coincidentally is available for takeout from your local library. There is great photo of the Bluestown Road. The road was used so frequently, you can see in the photos that they actually developed tracks in them from the wheels. We have a piece of that Bluestone Road in front of the library, and I believe the Hurley Library has a piece as well. Chester Hartwell also has, you can see the taking down the lumber. That was another big industry at the time, hemlock. And he has a picture of the Looks like it's the Plank Road. Um, cool. Wurtsboro, New York, then and now. So Hildegard, if you look in the chat,
Yeah, yeah,
there's
I
a cool,
am.
at least you can get an image of what a road looks like.
Right. Thank you.
It's Chester. Thank you for posting that photo of the bluestone or the quarry piece in front of the old Hurley Library.
Yep. Yeah. That's neat. I'll have to send that to her. I don't know if she had the Hurley director.
Well, if Hildegard, do you have another question?
No, I don't. I'm checking. I'm scrolling through the chat just to see what other people have posted here.
And Raleigh, Allison Irwin would like to know where this will be posted, so you can
It
handle
will,
that question.
sure. Within a few days, this will be uploaded to the Hurley Heritage Society's website, which is hurleyheritagesociety.org. It will also be linked to on our Facebook page. So check back there. If you have never checked out our website and our past lectures, we have quite a nice archive at this point of videotaped lectures that you can sift through and learn all about some great pieces of history. And this will be added to that archive, and it'll be a nice piece to add. To which I would like to say to you, Kara, thank you. Thank you for a wonderful presentation. And thank you to everyone for coming out on this lovely evening. And I want you to stay tuned for upcoming Hurley Heritage Society events. And the museum's opening weekend is coming May 2nd. So be sure to sign up to receive our newsletters by visiting our website at hurleyheritagesociety.org. And with that, I wish everyone a wonderful evening. And again, thank you for taking the time to be with us, Kara, and share this wonderful piece of information. And
And thank you for the invitation. We're pretty excited about it. So it's any opportunity to get people to go look is cool. Thank you.
yes, for those who may not have had the pleasure of visiting the West Hurley Library, please do. It's quite a nice facility with a lot of fantastic resources. Can you share what's the exact address of the library?
42 Clover. So if you head up to 375, you can take you can turn onto Cedar or Mosher, and we're right in between on Clover Street.
Okay, wonderful. With that, I wish to bid adieu to everyone who's joined us this evening. Thank you very much. And stay tuned to more coming from the Hurley Heritage Society. And if you haven't started following us on Facebook, please do. That's where you can find out the latest and greatest. All right. With that, thank you.
Great job, Kara.
Thank you very much.